This is Jeff from the INTJ equation, and today I'm joined by Jessica and Enfj. Would you like to introduce yourself real quick, Jessica?
I'm Jessica and I'm an ENFJ. I think I got into MBTI about 2 years ago and really have done like a deep dive into cognitive functions. And I get really excited and passionate about certain topics when I get into them.
Yeah, what other kind of topics are you into? I know you said you own a bookstore. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I run a bookstore right now as my full-time job. I also am on my local city council and run a small farm as well. And this last year, I wrote a novel that I'm hoping to get published. So,
Oh yeah, that's cool. What's a
yeah.
novel about?
It's kind of a sci-fi fantasy blend, basically three different main characters and three different women in three different timelines. So one is in the 1300s, one is present day, and then one is in the 2300s. And so as the reader is reading them simultaneously, they're getting little hints of how each of the women are connected through there's magic and different fantasy elements that kind of weave their lives together.
That's cool. Well, have you taken any steps to get it published, or are you still like in the editing process, or is it complete?
Yeah, so I finished my first draft and now I'm kind of working through edits. I've met another like writing buddy actually on Reddit where we've been like swapping chapters back and forth and giving each other feedback. So that's kind of the process that I'm in right now, hoping to get it published. And then this is actually book one of book three of three books. So I have all three books planned out, of course. As an ENFJ, I have like maps and outlines and big plans, but I just have the first one actually written. So hopefully to get that published first, and then I can work on book 2 and 3.
Okay, well, good luck. There's always self-publishing options. I don't know a whole lot about it, but that's an option.
Yeah, and I've looked at both options and there's definitely pros and cons to either one.
Yeah. All right. I'm not too familiar with ENFJs. I've ran into them. I only knew maybe like one personally. What is it like being an ENFJ? What's your take on life?
So I usually come off very bubbly and excitable about lots of things. I think a lot of people I think ENFJs are fairly confident because we don't let we don't let things stop us, but we do have it. Internally, I have a lot of overthinking tendencies and some anxiety, just of how I worry about things or how I come off or if I offended someone or something like that. And but a lot of that isn't always apparent because I don't let those things stop me. So I come off as, I'm very social. I do love people, kind of a stereotypical ENFJ. My undergraduate degree was in anthropology and human rights. So that was way before I knew I was an ENFJ. I just think people are so interesting and I love hearing stories and I love just learning about all the, intricacies that make, somebody unique. So I can do the small talk and casual stuff, but I very much enjoy getting to know someone like on a deeper level and having long philosophical conversations.
That's very cool. So what made you decide to get in like a MBTI and typology and everything?
Probably I like understanding people and I guess this last year with COVID, I kind of got stuck at home alone. My son, I have a 9-year-old son, and he was doing virtual school, but I was out of work for about 9 months. That's when I wrote the book, but it kind of made me do a lot more self-reflection, not being around people, and because I do have a tendency to probably stay too busy and do a lot, and then just being at home with nothing to do just made me really think about what I want for my life and have that kind of reflection. And so I think that's when I got into, I had taken the test for like a leadership institute thing that I was a part of a few years ago. And so I knew I was an ENFJ from that. But but I didn't really learn more about it until this past year. And it's just, I don't know, it's just really been helpful to know that there's other people like me,
Yeah.
that because I don't think I really know, I might know a few ENFJs in real life, but not well. And being rare, like more rare in terms of the population, it just kind of was nice to meet, talk to other people online, learn that there's other people that have similar thinking patterns and yeah, as me. So I think that was, and learning about the cognitive functions and things like that, and that like extroverted feeling is my first function, and I am often thinking about other people first. But it's also important to take time for myself and to not overfunction for other people as well. So it's been nice to just better understand myself and other people.
Okay, very cool. So you mentioned extroverted feeling. It's kind of something as an INTJ that I'm devoid of and I don't really have much of. So it's
Yeah.
kind of hard for me to understand. So just can you like run it by like what's your go-to, how you're thinking all the time, like how you react to people?
Yeah, I think my default is to be thinking about how the other person is receiving something. So rather than just saying what I think about a situation, I'll be thinking of, how they're perceiving it, how I'm coming across, making sure it's, kind, considerate. I'm trying to be empathetic. I'm also at the same time taking in all of that. Like a lot of it isn't conscious necessarily, but taking in body language, taking in like a person's vibe. I I can sense when there's just like the slightest thing off in someone. So if they're like slightly annoyed, or there's just maybe a slight change in their tone of voice, and to the point where it's kind of annoying sometimes because I wish that I could just ignore those things, but I'm like, oh no, they're mad at me now, or
Yeah.
something like that. And maybe it's not me, but that's kind of where my mind goes. That I'm like, if so, or even texting, if someone doesn't use like enough emojis, I'm like, are they mad? you know, as they normally do, or something like that. So it can be a little bit exhausting, always thinking about how somebody else is feeling, but yeah, so I'm learning to balance that, and that's where I think just knowing that that's my first function is a way to balance it out with knowing that I have feelings too, and I can, and that's where I don't always take care of myself or recognize my own feelings until I get quiet.
Yeah, like we were talking a little bit before, I used to work with this ENFJ girl, and she's just always like always in my face, like, why don't you smile more? Why aren't you happy? And she's just sitting there like going out of her way to try to be happy. Like, you're just too intense for me. Please, just back away.
Yeah, and we do want everyone to be happy, like,
Yeah.
and that's something else I've been learning, is just that I can't make everyone happy, and I don't need to make everyone happy, and it's okay. But yeah, that's definitely a struggle.
So it's like that's something that like MBTI or typology taught you, like, okay, just not all people are just not happy-go-lucky and just not how we operate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that, yeah, just learning that other people, that's not their default. It just helps me have more understanding of where people are coming from, is that, the stereotype of like take an INTJ that might come off as blunt, or just saying something how it is, and it's not being rude. It's just that's, you're getting the most efficient way of communicating across,
Yeah,
right?
more or less. That's one thing I do like about ENFJs. They can be pretty blunt themselves, generally. Like,
Yeah, we're definitely straightforward and honest. So that's something that I don't shy away from. I don't shy away from conflict. I want to resolve it. I don't like it, but when I have something that I'm focused on, or something that needs to be done, or especially if someone needs to be, social justice issues, something needs to be stood up for, I'm definitely not afraid of speaking up.
okay, very cool. So how does, always asking like people who have high NI like myself, like how does their NI work? How does it work for you? I know it's you just talking to you, you're pretty wanty, like, oh, I wrote a book, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a city council, I wanted to own a bookstore, which is nothing wrong with it. It's great, I think.
Yeah. I would say when I have something in my mind that I want to get done, it helps me stay driven and focused. There's not a lot that can stop me when I'm on a mission. I um, when I have a vision for something. But the downside is I think it can be if something comes in the way of that vision or someone's introducing a new idea. I think it can be a little bit rigid. And so that's where I've tried to develop more of my extroverted intuition as opposed to introverted intuition, to be able to be more open-minded to new ideas coming in and changing pathways once I, if it's not going as planned as I had originally intended, being able to diverge from that I think is important also. But again, that's not my default. That's something I've kind of had to learn. My default is definitely to be very focused. My son, who I think is leaning towards INTJ,
Yeah.
we both have that in common. We can get really, really focused on a project, or he will nerd out on some random topic and just that's all he wants to do. It's all he thinks about. and I get that. Like I'm trying to think of the latest, well, MBTI maybe. I get so focused and I want to learn everything about it. A few years ago, it was genealogy and learning all my ancestry.
Yeah.
So I, had that's all I was doing, in my free time. So, but I think the intuitive piece of it too is really big picture thinking. So I'm often not just thinking of day to day, what do I want to be doing? It's really trying to take in like the big picture of, again, maybe this is a stereotype ENFJ thing, but like, what does the world need? What can I be doing to have a better impact on the world? And so I'm always kind of zooming out and thinking from a bigger perspective than just myself and my day to day life.
That was my next segue I was going to go into. It's a perfect way to go into it is according to John Beebe's cognitive attitude, like since it's in your second slot, the introverted intuition is kind of like the parent function, the mother father function. It's kind of like what you're
Mm-hmm.
responsible with. So I think you kind of tied that perfectly. You kind of want to see like a societal change, like what do I want for people to better the world?
Mm-hmm.
What is something
Yeah.
you would think that could change to better the world?
Well, so before I was working at the bookstore, like I said, I was out of work for about 9 months. And before that, I had actually started and ran my own nonprofit cafe.
Oh
And
yeah.
so it was a cafe that served local and organic food on a pay what you can basis. So
Oh
people,
wow.
there weren't any set prices, everything was by donation. And we were open for 5 years before COVID sadly shut it down. But yeah, that was, I'm really passionate about food and the food we put into our bodies and the earth and just being good stewards of the resources that we're given. And so that was, I really want people to have access to fresh, healthy foods, regardless of their ability to purchase them. That I believe that we should all be able to have healthy foods and that we should support local farmers and do good things. And so that was kind of my whole vision for the world, and just in terms of sustainable communities and really creating that world that I wanted to live in. So it was a beautiful thing, and it's sad that it is over, but it still doesn't change my vision for the world. And I do hope that there's pay what you can cafes all over the United States, which is great. And I definitely don't see myself stopping. It's just, again, changing direction. And I still try to do as much as I can on a personal level, in terms of having a good impact on our earth and, how I eat and things like that.
That's pretty awesome. Like that's one thing that really bothers me is just like homelessness and stuff like that. Like, I think it's something that really shouldn't be a thing. I think it's something that we can
Mhm.
totally fix and people not
Yeah.
having enough food and stuff like that. But I'm sorry that COVID shut that restaurant down. I never heard of a pit like a pay sliding scale restaurant. That's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, I had actually brought the idea to a business counselor back in like 2015 when we were thinking about getting started, because I had this big idea and I'm like, everyone should have access to food and we can do this. And he was like, no, this isn't going to work, and kind of shut it down. And so I shelved the idea for a while, and was looking at just starting a regular restaurant that would have like local and organic food. The idea kept coming back to me. And about 3 months later, I found there's a network called One World Everybody Eats, which is like a network of pay what you can cafes. And it was like the same vision that I had. And it was so exciting to find that there's already people doing this all over the United States. And there's like, I think at the time, about 50 to 60 cafes across the US. And so I connected with them and was able to, get different resources and share budgets and all this kind of stuff. And then we ended up fundraising about $90,000 to open the cafe. And we opened in 2016, and then we ran up until 2020.
That's an amazing thing. I mean, I really admire you. Like, oh, I wrote a book, I opened a bookstore, I ran this restaurant. Like, I have trouble just starting things. You said, like starting this project, I have so much trouble just getting things going, because I don't know, with INTJ, like there's so many options, you just don't know what to pick.
Yeah, well, and I've heard with INTJs, there's also the perfectionism aspect to that, right? That do you want to do something so perfectly, like the first time, that it's hard to actually start that project, to like get over that not being great at something. Do you have that?
Yeah, it's kind of like we are perfectionists to a sense, but we got to learn not to do that, because we're movement types. There's Linda Barron's interaction styles, which ENFJs are movement types. You just kind of like learn by trial and error, jump from one thing to another until you get it. We kind of have this picture in our mind, like INTPs, or just like control, where they get all the information, then they go with the plan. We're kind of like, just take little bits of it and just keep going and going and going. But we think, like with our SE inferior, we're just so insecure about looking dumb or being wrong or anything like that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we just don't act. We just get like analysis paralysis, and we just stay where we're at. What are some kind of like hindrances to your personality? Like what are some downsides of being an ENFJ, would you say?
Probably over functioning, overthinking, doing too much, burning out, not taking care of myself. So definitely some tendencies to be self-sacrificing or people pleasing. I would say I'm probably sensitive. So when people are blunt or sometimes straightforward, or things can hurt my feelings easily. So I wish I wasn't as sensitive, but I am. And my ex is actually an ENTP, and that was definitely the emotional validation and connection and like sensitivity was definitely an issue in our relationship, because he would just say things how they were, or sometimes say things just so he could push buttons. And it over time definitely got to me. So I would say those are definitely some of the things that I can come off as too much, or to some people, I think. So I really do like care. I think people think sometimes we can be fake. ENFJs really do try to be kind and nice, but then it can come off as fake if people don't think we're being genuine. I think there's that to it as well.
Okay, very cool. So how does your decision-making process? Well, one thing before I go to that, I wanted to bring up, like, like FEs, kind of like people can be like kind of like a doormat, so like people can walk all over you. That's something you kind of mentioned. Is that something you have to kind of like set boundaries for yourself with some people?
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing probably that I'm learning is setting boundaries for myself. Still at, almost 35 years old, but I'm getting there. I definitely have a tendency I don't think it's a conscious thought for me. It's just, I really do want to be accommodating to people. And so I think I can see things from other people's perspective. And so I'm like, oh, if they want to do things this way, we can do it that way. And then next thing I know, it's been 5 years and I've let this person get away with this thing that bothers me or something, I don't even, and I don't know if that's the introverted intuition that all of a sudden it hits me and I have this kind of like aha moment where I'm like, this isn't okay. And this behavior I've been allowing for so long. And so I'm really trying to get better at noticing those things in the moment. And if something does bother me, speaking up then, as opposed to just allowing it for, a time, because I don't think that's healthy for either person.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked about NI and FE a little bit. How does your SE child work?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I have some maybe impulsive tendencies. There's definitely like, it's where I like to play. I do yoga. I garden and farm, and it's usually where I find my peace. All of a sudden, it's really grounding for me. Those activities, and all of a sudden, it's like I'm back in my body, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have a body. I'm not always in my head, and so having something physical to do really brings me back down and is really grounding. So trying to think of other, I definitely, novelty seeking is probably some extroverted sensing tendencies. I like new things. I can get bored doing the same day-to-day thing. So yeah.
Okay, so that's cool. Yeah, very. I like gardening and stuff too, and doing stuff like that. Doesn't really have time to do it. It's very important to find things to keep you in the present moment, to kind of get you out of the head, like you said, and get you in the present moment, your own body.
Yeah,
Very.
probably don't do enough of it though, is the thing. It's definitely not my first function. Being a third function, I don't think it is always my default. So it's like reminding myself that I need to have some sort of physical practice like that, like yoga every week, is really important.
Yeah, yoga's great, actually. I think I need to do it more often.
hmm
So let's talk about the inferior function a little bit. Your TI. So how have you? It sounds like you wrote a book and stuff. So you definitely working on your TI. Is that something that you've been insecure about over the years? Would you say?
I've really thought about this because I mean, I do have a tendency to overthink things and I can get pretty analytical and research something like crazy. But it's not always a healthy process for me because it's just like almost cycling, like I never get an answer. And it's usually when I tap into my intuition, that's where I find my answers, and listening more to my gut. And the intuitive side. So I don't know if that's necessarily my strong suit, but I do think that growing up, I had my family growing up really valued schoolwork and thinking. And so part of me wonders if I developed a lot of my thinking side growing up, and it's only now I'm kind of actually learning to tap more into more natural tendencies like the intuitive side of me. But both my parents my stepmom's at ISTJ, my dad is an ESFP, and then my sister's an ESFJ. So I'm the only N in my family. But yeah, they were all very practical. They're like, why do you want to save the world? Or why do you do
Yeah.
these crazy ideas, And they're like, why don't you just go to school for business? Or just do something and make good money and get a good job type of thing. So I think as a child, again, I wanted to please my family and please my parents. So I definitely would do those things to try and be a good daughter and things like that. And so I think I definitely developed my introverted thinking when I was growing up quite a bit. So
Exactly what you need to do, but rarely people do it. So that's good. You got the leg up in life.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
Still
know.
learning lots of things, but
Yeah, but you never stop learning. So, or you shouldn't
no.
stop learning. That's something most people do after college or school. They just stop
Mhm.
learning. Should be an ongoing process. I know it's a very lonely feeling being the only intuitive in a family. So,
Yeah, is that the same for you?
yeah, my mom and stepdad are both ESFPs, which is pretty rough.
Okay.
And my sister was an ISFJ. So,
Okay. Yeah, the ESFP. My dad is all yeah, ESFP and very impulsive and likes to have fun and
yeah,
not necessarily the most responsible of parents.
yeah, they need kind of someone to kind of keep them under control, and they
Yeah.
just have that, you know.
Yeah, well that's why my dad remarried an ISTJ and I think she's perfect for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, she keeps him in line and it works out great for them.
Yeah. So you talked about your son a little bit. I'm definitely interested in hearing about your INTJ son. Any other INTJs that you've ran in throughout life, and what's your experience has been like with them?
Yeah, well, I worked with so at the cafe that I ran, I was the executive director, and we had an executive chef who I'm not sure if he was an ENTJ or an INTJ. I know they're the same cognitive functions, just slightly, flipped. Um, he he was definitely one of them, and we had like a great working relationship in terms of because we had the same vision, same drive, to have just a really great, efficient workspace where you know he was a little commanding in
Yeah.
the kitchen, but um but in terms of like I let that be his domain and he let me run the rest of the cafe, and we kind of like found our areas, and just in terms of the ability to get things done, it was kind of an amazing working relationship because we both could respect, and we were both slight workaholics, so
Yeah.
it worked out good. But like I said, I could tell if he definitely seemed more more introverted on a personal level. So he would go home and play video games and not want to see anybody, but but in a workspace he could be extroverted uh and was very kind of commanding in terms of how he ran his kitchen. So he could have just been an INTJ who you know ran a kitchen and had to talk to other people. But so I'm not sure. But other than that, I don't really know any INTJs. You're so rare in terms of the population. And it's really only now that I'm starting to really think my son is an INTJ. So that's, he's only 9, so it could change, but he definitely has some of the stereotypical traits of an INTJ. He's had the death stare down since he was like 2. He doesn't smile that much. It just makes him, it's the whole why aren't you smiling? No. Are you mad at me? But he's very precise in how he likes things. He does not care at all about what other people think. And I'm like, how, like, you need to teach me your ways. He's just so uniquely him, and it's kind of amazing. Just I try to encourage that. I want him to be himself, and so but we'll be out in public, and we'll be walking by and being on city council and running a cafe, and I know, and being in a small town, I know practically everyone. And so he's like, Mom, we're just going to the store, that's all we're doing, we're not talking to people. He's like, you get distracted and then you talk to everyone. He's like, we need to stay focused. He's like, do you have the list? Okay. And he checks off my grocery list for me and keeps me on task. And just so funny. But we have really great philosophical talks. Like, I mean, he's definitely a deep thinker, which I just absolutely love, because we can talk about all sorts of, why does the universe exist, how are we even here, and for having someone so young to be able to ask those big questions, it just makes me so happy.
Yeah, it actually does sound quite a bit like an INTJ. To go back a little bit to the guy you used to work with,
Yeah.
there is a theory that like once you find your true happiness, like for like an INTJ would be like their ESFP dual side, their subconscious,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to call it. So him like being in a present moment, cooking and running the kitchen, that was probably like him coming out as extroverted, and him like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
being an SE user and really bringing it out into the world. So that was probably him,
Mm-hmm.
you know, doing what he's really supposed to do and finding happiness, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was an amazing, actually from Tucson. Eating food, like, I mean, every plate of food that came out of his kitchen was, you could just tell the amount of skill and passion and dedication that went into every plate. It was amazing.
Very cool. Sounds like
Yeah.
exactly what he should be doing.
Hmm.
What are some of your son's interests? I know you said you have like the deep talks and things like that. What's he kind of like, is he into?
I books and video games is about it.
Oh yeah.
No, he says he wants to be a hacker when he gets older. So he has taught himself some coding just online. He's learned that. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a typical boy and loves video games and could probably do that all day if I let him.
Yeah.
But if he's not playing video games, he would much rather be in a book. And if he doesn't have a book, then he's bored. So he, he reads at like it's like something like a seventh grade reading level. This boy he could read all day long if he, that's all he wants to do, is just absorb himself into a book. And he doesn't love he doesn't love like gardening and farming, sadly. So we do have him do some of that with us. But we always joke that if I go hiking, because we do hiking a lot, quite a bit, and the second he gets into a forest, he's like all of a sudden he's this whole other kid, and and I don't know in terms of cognitive functions, maybe you could understand it better, but all of a sudden he is excited and happy, and he's skipping through the forest, and he's like frolicking, and it's like this whole other side of him that that I don't see on a normal basis. He's very serious, very stern most of the time. Um, and then all of a sudden he gets out in nature, and it's like this magical sun that and I love it, because I think it's great for him to have that kind of experience. But I don't totally understand it. So I don't know if that's like the flip side. What's the in terms of cognitive functions, what would that be?
Definitely sounds like he's getting out of his NI and going into his SC, just being in nature, being in the
Mm.
present moment. That's something I'd definitely like to do. Not here in Tucson in the summer, but
Yeah.
I like going out, especially like where it's green and forest or there's water. I just love being out in nature and just kind
Mhm.
of absorbing the environment and just getting away from everything and getting away from, problems and life and work and all that. So can
Yeah.
definitely just be bringing out his ESFP side, it sounds like.
Yeah. That makes sense.
If he is an INTJ, how does he get along with his dad? You mentioned before he's an ENTP, you think?
Yeah, he's my husband, or my ex-husband is definitely ENTP. So they butt heads a lot,
Oh yeah,
actually.
right.
I think because it's interesting that INTJs and ENFPs have some similarities. Um, because in terms of cognitive functions, I guess you share two, right, of the
The
same
T and
functions.
FI, yeah.
Mhm. Um, but sometimes there's some similar traits. And so I think that's sometimes why they butt heads, because my husband will expect my son to just do what he says. And my son's like, why? He always wants a reason why. Everything has to make sense to him. He's not just going to blindly obey. And so he questions a lot of things. And yeah, so my ex-husband does not appreciate the questioning. And so I think there's having a power dynamic, as in a father to son relationship, would be different than, I think INTJs and ENTPs as friends or romantic partners are supposed to be fairly compatible. But I think, because they do have some similarities there, but I think as a, father son, there is some difficulty, but I mean, they get along great. for the most part. It's just, yeah, usually when it's like challenging, because
Mhm.
my son really does question everything all the time. And I will sit there and I'll be like, okay, let's explain it. And I kind of go into teacher mode of, and then usually that bores him and then he's done. He doesn't want to hear it anymore. But
Like, okay, I'll do what you want. Just leave me alone.
yeah.
Yeah, NI users, you definitely got to give them a choice, or
Yes.
it's hard to make them do something they don't want to do. So
Mm-hmm.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, ENTP, INTJ is supposed to be the highest if you do it at compatibility as far as cognitive functions go rates, but
Mm-hmm.
the father-son thing could be a little tricky because it's a lot of enabling, I think, like they just get along so well and kind of blend in together. But like when you need to, put some authority down, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, you're supposed to be my friend, what's going on here?
Exactly. Yeah. And when they are just having fun or something, yeah, they get along great. But yeah, it's usually when discipline's involved or something like that that it gets a little trickier.
Very cool. How does your son get along in school? Does he have struggling fitting in or anything like that?
I wish I could see him in school because I get his feedback mostly. I think I used to volunteer when he was in kindergarten and first grade,
Mhm.
in his classroom some of the times. And I think, yeah, socially, he can be a little bit awkward. He doesn't always know maybe how to, like, it's that, yeah, extroverted feeling that is kind of lacking in knowing like what's the best thing to do in this situation. And so sometimes he can just come off as like a know-it-all. He probably does have a tendency to think he's smarter than the other kids in the class. And I'm always like, even if you are, don't say it, like don't tell everybody that you know. So yeah, I mean he's really bright. He does like to explain things to people, which I think is interesting. Like he has this like really it's more reserved but this compassionate side to him where he does feel deeply, and especially when it's something he cares about a lot. So he's come home and told me, there was a kid in his class that wasn't understanding a subject, and he made sure to spend time with them to explain it, because he did understand it. And so I think he really does care, and he is empathetic, but it's not always apparent. And so but he yeah, I think he does really well in school. I'm lucky that in terms of him being book smart and things like that, um he does excel there.
Sounds like he's on the right track. We're supposed to use our extroverted thinking as like your NI is like your responsibility. So he's being responsible with his thinking and trying to help kids that are struggling, which is very
Hmm.
cool. A lot of NTJs are actually really bad in school because they just don't see the point in doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that as hopefully that won't be the case, but I mean he's still young, but I could definitely see him going down that path. Like, what's the point? What's I can learn all of this stuff from YouTube. Why am I sitting in this classroom?
Yeah. School is kind of a paradox like that. What are
Mhm.
some tips you can give to like a parent who might watch this with an INTJ child and they're struggling, because it can be pretty challenging to bring up an INTJ, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's always making sure to give him like his space, that he does need time alone, which I don't always understand personally, but knowing that he does process things a lot differently than me. And so just like remembering, yeah, if you are an extroverted parent with an introverted child, um, just giving them that time and that space and that processing time to, if there is conflict or you're dealing with something, I want to jump in and usually fix it right away, but that's not necessarily the best thing to do with him. So I think supporting him too, like letting him kind of run down those paths when he gets excited or passionate about something, is kind of letting him, because he has this like drive internally. He doesn't necessarily need to be motivated by some external reward, or he just when he gets excited about something, he can just letting him kind of run with it and having that internal motivation, I think, is good to support as a parent.
Do you think he ever has any, like you said, he was socially awkward a little bit? Does he ever have like any insecurities that he like might look bad, or he might look dumb, or he might be wrong, and that keeps him from doing something that he wants to do?
Yeah, I would say definitely the thing about if he doesn't quite, he wants to know everything. He's told me this. He wants to know everything. But the thing is, if he doesn't know something or he's not good at something right away, he can easily just give up and stop doing it. And so that's where I think hopefully I help him, is to encourage him and say it's okay to make mistakes. And the only way we get better is by practicing it. Now he does not care at all about looks.
Really?
His hair hasn't cut it since he was 3, and he won't pull it back. It's down to about the 3/4 of his back is how long his hair is. And he does not care if everyone thinks he's a girl. He could care less. He'll just say, "I'm a boy," and then walk away. And he won't wear jeans. He only wears comfy clothes, because why would you wear something uncomfortable? So he knows exactly what he wants, and he really doesn't care what other people think about how he looks. That may change as he becomes a teenager, and there's more social pressures, but as of now, he really isn't worried about that sort of thing.
Really interesting. Yeah. Well, it sounds like he has a good supportive environment with you and your ex-husband. So that's good. I think it's like hard for us to find someone that kind of understands us, or at least respects the way we want to be and lets us kind of be our own person. We just really have to be our own person more than any other type, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you ever tried teaching him like MBTI or Jungian analytical psychology, or any things that you learned?
Well, yeah, of course I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he actually knows all about MBTI, but I don't want him to get stuck in a box where he thinks I'm an INTJ, so this is the only way I can be. I reiterate, like, I think you're an INTJ. These are the reasons, but you're still young and you can change and grow, and we're always learning, and we're also all using all the cognitive functions. And so it's not like these are the only things you use. So yeah, we have talks about all of that.
I think it's a very good tool for us. I don't really go by the MBTI too much. I go by like Jungian analytical psychology, which goes a lot deeper. But we just, with our lack of FB and our lack of SI, which you could relate to the lack of SI, I'm sure you have the SI
Oh gosh,
trickster.
it's like non-existent for me.
Yeah, it was just really struggle like with people. So I think having a system in place where he can learn about people with his TE would definitely benefit him as he grows older. So that's great, I think.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk a little about your position on the council for your town. How did that come about? What do you do exactly?
Yeah, a few years ago, I definitely got more into politics, just in terms of, like, nationwide elections and things like that. Again, I am a pretty big social justice advocate, and I really believe that that we should live in a more equitable country, and I want to see everyone treated more fairly. And so that's, I think, what led me to get into politics myself. I am in a fairly conservative Midwest town, so I wasn't sure. I'm fairly progressive, and I wasn't sure how that would come off and if I would even get elected. However, we do have a university in town, so there is that, in terms of, it's a little more balanced with the university being more liberal and progressive than just the town that I'm in. So so I ran for my local election because at the time I was working at the cafe, and again, concerned with just people having access to food, homelessness, creating, again, those food systems in our local community, supporting local farmers, local businesses, really small businesses, things like that, were the things that I, was my platform essentially when I was running. me myself being kind of an entrepreneur type spirit, love to see and support other entrepreneurs and other small businesses in town. So that was kind of the drive and the reason that I was thinking about it. Actually, it was funny because I wasn't going to run. I had thought about it before. And then actually I had 2 people within the same week tell me that they thought I should run for city council. So I was like, okay, maybe this is something I should do. And so, yeah, I ran. I'm on my 3rd year. It's a 3-year term. And I'm actually the mayor pro tem, which is like the vice mayor of the town, which really doesn't mean anything. Just means I run meetings if the mayor's gone. So yeah, but yeah, it's been good so far. I mean, I've been really happy. A lot of local politics is boring, but a lot of it's approving like water and sewage things and new
Important,
trucks and
important
but
things, but kind of mundane, I guess. But
yeah, they're important, yes. But I'm definitely glad that I am on the city council.
imagine it had been a struggle with COVID. How's that changed things?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I mean, we had to, make a decision to do a mask mandate. I mean, there all those sorts of things. Being a smaller city, we actually didn't have as much say as some larger cities. Like we couldn't make the decisions. We had to kind of default to the state. So it took away a little bit of the pressure of people being mad at us one way or the other. Is like, well, our hands are tied, we can't do this. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a challenge in terms of the city just worrying too about losing resources or revenue or being able to function, all the things you have to think about in terms of budget and stuff like that. But I think we fared pretty well, honestly. Obviously, my business was one of the businesses that closed, which was sad, but I think we're at a point where we're rebounding and the economy is kind of coming back, so that's exciting.
Do you think you'd ever open up the restaurant back up? I know you said you have a bookstore. If you'd like to talk about that, you said it's the university bookstore you run, or is it near the university?
Yeah. So I was actually already thinking about stepping down right before COVID hit. I mentioned I have a tendency to like to start new things and new projects. And so I was already thinking about passing off the cafe to someone else who would rather do more of the day-to-day, maintenance of it. And so I probably won't be starting the cafe. They did keep the nonprofit as, in terms of it still exists as a nonprofit, even though the cafe is not open. And then they did rehire a new executive director, and they do hope to reopen. So, I'm not involved anymore, but I'm hoping that, that does happen and it does continue. So, and then the bookstore that I run is just tied to, yeah, it's actually on campus. So I'm just the manager there. So I don't have a whole lot of say in all of, in terms of policy stuff. But I get to make new used book sections and things like that. And like I said, I'm kind of a book nerd and I like to see all the different books that come in and, so it's a good job. It's nothing too exciting, but yeah, it works for now.
Very cool.
My next project.
You have somewhere to sell your book. There you go.
There I go. Yep.
All right. Well, time's going by pretty quick. I think an ENFJ in politics would be a breath of fresh air. There's just too many ESTJs in politics, I think.
Yeah. I mean, some of the more famous like ENFJs, I think are, Martin Luther King Jr. I'm trying to think of who else in terms of there's, a lot of, I hope that I, can inspire people. And that's one of the things I think that I'm fairly good at is, being able to get people excited about different ideas. And so I think, yeah, it would be a good place. Oh, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, is supposed to be an ENFJ.
Oh, is she? I haven't really looked a whole lot into her or anything, but that makes a lot of sense compared to like how she butts heads with everybody who just like the ESTJs, they want to keep everything the same thing that it worked in the
Yeah.
past, not how it's working now or how it's going to work in the future, but how it worked in the past. And not really
Mm-hmm.
concerned about people, just more about numbers and figures. And
Yep.
so I
Yeah,
think it's
definitely.
definitely need to get some intuitives in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, this time's running by pretty quick. We're coming up here on an hour. It's got a few more questions. You being an ENFJ and being a feeler, now you might not be comfortable asking this question or answering this question. Do you have a favorite type or a least favorite type?
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll start with least favorite, I guess.
Oh, there we go. Get to the nitty
Probably
gritty.
probably ESTJ. No offense to all the ESTJs out there. I'm sure you're lovely people. But yeah, kind of some of the things you just said in terms of just kind of sticking to what's always been done. This is how we've always done it. And I'm going to tell you how it's always been done, and kind of being commanding. It just rubs me the wrong way. And I don't love to be around ESTJs. They scare me a bit, honestly. I'm a little bit scared. So my favorite type, I've thought about this a lot because I think all my friends tend to be other NF types. I have my best friend ENFP. My best friend from high school is an INFP. The cafe I ran, I think every employee I had almost was an INFP.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Besides the INTJ, it was just throwing stuff at them or getting
Yeah.
mad.
Oh my gosh. He made so many of them cry. Like for real
Oh,
though.
I like.
So many people cried. um but so I think INFP is probably my favorite. um I don't know. I've, in terms of cognitive functions, I think extroverted intuition is my favorite cognitive function.
Yeah.
Um, just like seeing the people that I end up being friends with, like, my ex was, ENTP, and his first functions, extroverted intuition. My best friend's ENFP, hers is also the same. And then INFPs, and I have another good friend who's an INTP, and, their second function is extroverted intuition. And so I end up surrounding myself, I feel like, with people who use NE a lot. And I don't know if it's the bubbly off the wall ideas, or it's kind of quirky and weird, and I like that. But yeah, that's definitely my favorite cognitive function. So I'm going with INFP right now as my favorite type.
I love INFPs too, but like the chef in your kitchen, I kind of scare them off.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
just
mean
think,
to.
yeah, they're just so sweet and so sensitive and so compassionate, and but also weird and quirky and fun. And I think, I don't know, maybe they don't get enough love, in terms of a lot of people can be down on them, or they can be down on themselves. And so I think as an ENFJ, I like to like boost them up and be like, you're amazing, you should know that.
Yeah, I'm sure they appreciate that. That's something I struggle with, is validating people's emotions.
Hmm.
Something I'm working on.
Yeah.
All right. What would you like INTJs or other types to understand about you to kind of harmonize things a little bit better?
um hmm. I think, I guess maybe just knowing that, ENFJs or myself, I really do have like the best intentions, that I really do care deeply about people. Um, and some people think that that's suspicious, and that I like, if I'm too nice or too like in someone's face or something like that, then they think, yeah, that I'm fake, or they're like, no, what's your motive? Like they think there's some motive behind that, and I'm like, no, it's really just to be nice, like that. I just want other people to be happy, and then that makes me happy. But some people think that there's a reason that I'm being nice, and I would say it's just because that's what I want, and what it really is silly to say, but other people are happy, then I'm happy.
People think you have a motive, aka INTJs. We're very paranoid.
Yes. Or the ISTPs also.
Yeah, I can see
Yeah.
that for sure. Okay, my last question I have, what would you like to understand more about INTJs or other types?
Yeah. I would love to know more about INTJs, you know, internal processing, because I don't think at least my son, if I'm using his as an example, I try to like get him to express himself and say what he's feeling. And he doesn't have a lot there, but I know he thinks a lot because sometimes I hear him talking to himself like in the shower or like, in his bedroom. And I'm like, he's processing a lot. I know that he has a lot going on. But he doesn't tell me. And so I guess I would just love to know more understanding about your inner world, in terms of just like how you want to be approached, how you would like to, have relationships with other people. Because I don't always get that information, because sometimes he's just quiet. And so
Yeah, it's a question I get asked a lot, but it's cool. We just kind of like, I don't know if your NI works like this, but we're just always taking in information in our mind, just run like crazy, and it can be very, very exhausting. Ideally, we should be, taking this information, we should be figuring out what we want, and we should be using our TE to kind of get to where we want. We should be using our FI, and hopefully it's healthy, and it's good to ask him how he's feeling and try to get him connect with his emotions. And kind of make a moral compass of like what's good or bad. Hopefully we go towards the good side. Then we got to use our extroverted sensing to kind of bring it out into the world. So we're just kind of always processing things. Just you're dead on. We do like our alone time in our space, and we don't like have people come up like, why don't you smile more? Why aren't you happy? Why am I making you mad? You're not making us mad. You're probably making us more a little irritated by doing that. But I learned and understand that just how some people are. Like, kind of like that's our first go-to is like, what do you want from me when somebody's coming up and trying to like get me to smile and be happy or trying to cheer me up. But I just realized now that just how people are, and it's just how that's how I am, and it's kind of like one of my things I just really want to bring awareness just to kind of how everybody operates. So we don't like small talk, we don't like mundane conversations, we like deep conversations. We like people who have interest, and Netflix and Xbox is not a hobby. I'm sorry. Like, like a bookstore running for council, that's pretty awesome, I think. So I definitely like to talk to people that are motivated and have interest.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have. Do you have any other questions or anything for me?
Not that I can think of. I feel bad that I just talked so much.
Oh no, perfect. I try to get everyone to do about 80-90% of the talking, so it's beautiful.
Okay, well, there you go. You asked good questions, so yeah, I just appreciate. Yeah, it was fun to. Like I said, I love talking about cognitive functions and kind of what makes people. It's so interesting to me, that we all have such different ways that our brains work, and that we're never really going to understand how another person thinks. Like, we're never going to really know. We can try to explain using these different tools that we have, but we're never really going to be able to experience what somebody else experiences.
Yeah, there's 16 personality types, but there's like 7.5 billion personalities out there. It's just kind of like the structure, the skeleton of everybody. So not everybody's the same, so don't typecast people.
No, definitely not.
All right, well, if you got nothing else, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yep. Yeah, if you liked what you heard, just please like, share, subscribe, share it with other people to get the message out and help this project grow. I definitely have some more projects coming out, some more YouTube videos that I hope to do in the future. Yeah, just please support it if you like it, and leave a comment below. I really appreciate the feedback and interacting with the audience as much as I can. Until next time, thank you for going on Clickbait, and have a good day.